Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, according to your time zones. Well, my name is Vikas, and I'm the host for today's session for the webinar today. We have Ankit and we have Siva would be presenting the webinar for today, wherein Ankit will be walking us through the Kellton Text portfolio and make us understand the services what we'll be able to provide. And Shiva, who is working as one of the technical consultant with us, whom we shortly call as SS, will be helping us out in understanding OAuth 2.0 and its functionalities. So Ankit, the floor is yours. I see we have a beautiful audience right over there, and I'm sure we'll be able to go through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas, and good morning to everyone. So I'll quickly walk you through and give you an introduction on Kellton. This slide talks about our values, which covers our mission to be the trusted partners of our client, and our vision is to offer infinite possibilities with technology. It also gives you a brief about our milestones since we started our business in 1993, and how do we, what we are right now in 2017, and gives you a brief about our progress. So who we are and what we do. So Kellton Tech is actually subdivided into 3 business units, which cover digital transformation, wherein we maintain the system of engagement through Drupal, digital connected enterprise, which is actually our system of differentiation, and this is where we have Software AG, IBM, and MuleSoft partnership, and then enterprise solution business unit, which is actually system of record, and SAP, Salesforce are our main actors in this business unit. Our numbers, so we have almost 600 innovative clients, out of which 39 are our Fortune 1000 clients. We have a strength of 1100 people, and our headquarters is in Princeton, New Jersey. We also have a global presence in United States, Europe, and India. Approximately 400 to 500 resources are in India who works with us in different time zones supporting different clients. It gives you, this slide gives you an agnostic list of our customers by industry. This slide talks about the core services portfolios. So we have 7 core services highlighted here, starting from advisory services to API to BPM, in-memory data solutions, real-time analytics, to infrastructure modernization and providing DevOps services. This slide talks about our technology partnerships. So we Kellton Tech have partnership with Software AG, we have partnership with MuleSoft, IBM, and Informatica, and we recently get into a partnership with CA Technologies as well. These are all our core technology expertise. So if you see, the list is increasing every day. We are experts in providing solutions related to IBM, Software AG, or MuleSoft, or Informatica, and so forth. This slide gives you a brief about our industry solution and domain expertise. It gives you a different solutions we have worked on with different domain like banking or finance. Gives you a brief about the solutions we have proposed for retail and manufacturing, transportations, and energy and utilities companies. Okay, with this small and brief introduction about Kellton Tech, I hand over the mic to Shiva, who will walk us through our today's agenda and cover our topics for API security.
Thanks, Ankit. Good morning, everyone. This is Siva Subrahmanyam here. I'm working with Kellton Tech and in the IT industry for more than 8 years, and I've been working on the Software AG suite of products. And And today we are going to talk about the API security, and this is the planned agenda. So the webinar is intended to be for 30 minutes, but if the demo part that I'm going to cover, goes beyond 30 minutes, please allow me to do so that we can properly finish this off. So in today's agenda, we will be talking about a brief introduction about APIs and the security fundamentals, followed by the deep dive on the OAuth 2.0 framework and how we can establish security for the APIs. And we can look at the differences between OAuth 1.0 framework versus the 2.0 version. And when we decide to do the OAuth framework, for security in our APIs in our organizations, what would be the pros and cons of doing it? And based on the time limitation, we can have a fruitful demo as well. Followed by which we will leave the session for the question and answers. But the question and answer session can even continue offline through emails as well. So we would be happy to do anything that we can do for you. So API introduction. So the word API doesn't really need a introduction for someone who is working in the IT industry, because the word API stands for Application Programming Interface, which is essentially to connect to different software components. So this isn't new. This has been there since the way we have started to communicate between two software components or software applications in an IT architecture. But in the recent past, probably in the last couple of years, we have been hearing about the API strategy, API economy, API security, all these buzzwords, API management. A lot of companies have started to come and started coming up with various API management tools and stuff like that. So what has essentially changed to have this transformation across the companies or in the IT industry? So if you look at the last 5 years of time, the internet availability, the World Wide Web availability to the remote regions of the world and to the remote public, in fact the people, has increased. And on the other side, the smart devices revolution is also going on. So the people have more access to the internet than it was before, like 3-4 years back. They have the smartphones and smart tablets and stuff like that, more computers availability. So now the people are themselves ready to access the websites and then get to know about the businesses and do whatever they want to do over the network. So this is where the company started to find a business opportunity to enhance and grow their businesses to reach the real public, which were actually remotely hidden areas with respect to the direct business. As well, when the companies want to reach out to the real public, they started to have the third-party applications expose the data and services of the organizations in the form of APIs, in more innovative and creative ways, and that's how it creates more interest among the people, and that's where companies did relatively see higher growth in the businesses and in the revenue that they see. So in today's topic, we at Kellton Tech also wanted to take part in this revolution and wanted to share some knowledge that in the API security area and API area. In our previous webinars, if you have followed, Ankit Malhotra from our team has walked all of us through the API strategy and the right ways of doing it. And in today's demo, I'm going to specifically confining my talk to the API security. So why is API security so important? Because in simple words, we want to be secure and we don't want to risk our data. Our intentions are good. We want to grow our businesses. We want to reach out to the remote public and thus make more profits and revenues. But at the same time, while doing so, we don't want to compromise on the security. We don't want to put our own data or the resources at risk. So on the same lines, the security has its own crucial role. So it is very much essential for an organization to take an active part or spend enough time on the security implementation as well as in the as they do in the API implementation. So when we talk about the API security, the basic things that we start thinking of is the authentication and authorization, which are not really big terms to be understood. But just to give a basic understanding of that, authentication essentially deals with the identity of the person or the application which is invoking the service, and authorization is something to do with the eligibility of that application, whether that particular client can access the service or not. So in a layman example, when a person is trying to fly through Chicago to New York, then he goes to airport and he will be asked to show his ID proof like passport or driver's license, which essentially identifies himself with the airport authorities, saying that, hey, yes, he is the guy who was booking ticket with them. And once he has that identity proof confirmed, then he will go to the next stage wherein they will check the authorization of it. Just because he has the identity verified, he cannot fly through the flight. So he needs to have some authorization, and that authorization is nothing but the boarding pass. So when he has the boarding pass, yes, he can travel in that flight. But again, that boarding pass is something like, if you think of it as a token or a key, he cannot fly through any flight. That boarding pass is only allowed to fly from Chicago to New York. So that's where the scope is also defined. So just the same example we are going to replicate in our technical terminology as well. So going forward, we'll be dealing with the token-based authentication schemes, wherein we will be talking about the tokens and how it's going to authenticate and authorize the clients, and how it is going to have the scopes defined, etc., and so on. So when we think of API security, I want to talk about the HTTP security mechanisms, because the API essentially can be written in any manner, may it be a SOAPful web service or a RESTful API, a RESTful web service, or SOAP RPC, or in any other fashion. But essentially, when we talk about reaching the remote public and the third-party lightweight applications like mobile applications, then people find it more easy and comfortable to write the services in the RESTful API. So we are going, and RESTful APIs are in turn the implementations of the HTTP methods implementation and emphasizing on the resources. That's where we are actually going towards the HTTP security mechanisms. Okay, just to start with the HTTP security mechanisms, starting from the basic authentication, we have a lot of authentication mechanisms like basic authentication, digestive authentication, as well as the digital certificates authentication, and so on. So let's talk in brief about what are the advantages or disadvantages of these schemes before we actually get on to the OAuth. The basic authentication deals with the user ID and password in plain text. So when it is sent over the wire in the HTTP model, then any attacker who wants to intercept the request will easily be able to see the user ID and password in plain text, and so he can replay the attacks. He can replay the request going forward, which is a threat for our API. We don't want to do that. So and even if it is base64 encoded user ID and password, it is of course can be easily decoded as well. So, and as well, the request should have the user ID and password in every request. The client should send it the user ID and password credentials with every request, and the server's job is to validate that user ID and password in every request. So that's where it is vulnerable to the man-in-the-middle attacks. It also demands the HTTPS communication to be at least a bit safe on the on that part. Next is the digestive authentication, wherein we don't want to send the raw user ID and password over the network. Rather, what we are going to do is like we will be hashing the password, meaning that we will be using a cryptic algorithms, and then we actually create a hash code of the password, and that's what we are going to send to the server. So if you look at the slide over here, I have a diagram which depicts the hash code is generated at the client level, and that is sent, transmitted over the network to the server, and the same, using the same cryptic algorithm, the digest is also created on the server side, and then these digests gain, the server side digest versus the client side digests are compared, and that's how it identifies the client. But again, this has its limitations too. It is a bit difficult to implement. Of course, this can be, this is probably the most secure way of doing it, but it has certain limitations, like when working with certain cryptic modules such as the FIPS, it may not work. And as well as when the hash code, even the passwords are not directly decoded by the clients, it is more probable that the hashed password, if it is intercepted, then that can be used to replay the request. So, are we going to just deal with the user ID and password, or the user authentication schemes, or we just want to add any more features to that? So, with that mind, with that thought mind, so the token-based authentication scheme has been introduced, wherein it actually goes a bit forward in its features, and it provides additional security, stateless, and it's a stateless protocol, and it allows to scalability, and it allows the delegated access or delegated authorization. We are going to deal about all of this in detail in the next slides. So, so these are the advantages we are targeting at. So let's understand what is token-based authentication. A token is nothing but a unique string for every request, and that token will have hidden data about the user authentication. So when the client sends this token data to the server validates this token, and then recognizes the client and authorizes the client to invoke their API. So we have a couple of types of tokens: a bearer token and a holder of the key token, HOK. So bearer token is nothing but whoever bears the token or whoever possesses the token are free to invoke the API. So that sounds like, if the token is by any chance, if someone knows our token, probably they can go ahead and invoke our API with the token too. So whereas that is bearer token, whereas the HOK, like the holder of the key token, talks about the proof of possession as well. So at the server level, at the server side, when the token is received, it also includes the user validation, whether is that the right user to whom this token was issued. So the user and token combination is validated in the HOK method. And like I said, the token-based authentication provides extra security. It provides delegated access, fine-grained access control by defining the scopes. And the very important and vital point here is that we can make the tokens to expire and regenerate the new tokens. We can have lesser time around for the time validity for the tokens, and that's how we can ensure a bigger security. And yes, if you don't want any client to access your API anymore, you could revoke the access as well. So these are some things which are actually new features than using the just user ID and password authentication. So introducing OAuth 2.0 framework, we are going to talk a bit more about this API security mechanism. So OAuth stands for Open Authorization, which is a token-based authorization scheme. It facilitates delegated authorization. We are going to talk about what is delegated authorization. So what it essentially does is, like, if you think of a situation wherein OAuth 2.0, by the way, let me complete this slide before I explain, I get onto an example. So OAuth 2.0 defines various roles, distinguished roles. Those roles go like this: the resource owner. Resource owner is someone who has the who actually can grant access to the protected resources, or who owns the protected resources. A resource server, the place or the server where the protected resources are residing at. And this is the one which is supposed to communicate with the authorization server. The authorization server is something which issues the access tokens and validates them when the clients access the APIs with those tokens. Client is someone which actually invokes the API. It can be a browser-based application, or it can be a server-based application as well. So let me give you an example of the delegated authorization here. So I myself, I'm the end user. I have my photos, located in, say, my Facebook account, and those are my private photos. I want to print them, in my Picasa album, and I want to print them. And let's think that there is no way to directly print the photos from that. So I'm actually looking for a third-party client help to print my photos by connecting to my Facebook API. So the ideal way, or the basic way, is to share my user ID and password of the Picasa account to the client, so that the client would invoke the Picasa API and then present my user ID and password and access and get myself authenticated and access the photos and print them up. But in the delegated authorization, the main thing is that the resource owner or the person who owns the photos do not really need to share the user ID and password credentials with the client. So rather, you would just need to authorize the client, in the handshakes that go on once you initiate the request. So instead of sharing your user ID and password, you're just going to have OAuth handshake happen and approve those requests offline without sharing the user ID and password. Let's see how it happens. So user, let's think like I'm the user. I'm using a third-party app, and this app, I'm trying to access the photos in my Picasa album, and the client requests for authorization of this user. So it says that, hey, I want to access those photos in the Picasa album. Then it says that, or in the resource server going forward, we'll be using the client and the resource server and the terminology. So it says that I want to access those photos from the resource server. Then the resource server says that you are not the person who owns this, you are an application. So I want the authorization to be coming from the resource owner. So let me redirect your request to the author of this photos. So the authorization request is redirected to the resource owner by the authorization server, and that's where the resource owner grants the authorization by logging into the server. This is where the user is directly logging into the server where he has his photos. He is authenticating himself that, yes, I am the owner, and here is my user ID and password, and he is authenticating himself and then approving the authorization request. When he approves it, in the fourth step, the server now sends an authorization code to the client. That means it is authorizing the client to go ahead and access it. But at this stage, the client still has to carry this authorization code and get an access token out of it. So for that, it needs to invoke another service. This is another handshake, and then the server responds back with an access token and a refresh token. So, and then this access token would be actually used to access the protected resource. So next is like this. In this slide, we are talking about the refreshing access token. So like we discussed, when these access tokens and refresh tokens will have some expiry time. So the access tokens, the lesser validity you have for the access token, the more secure it is. And of course, it does have that many handshakes as well. But if you want to look at the security, you may want to compromise on that handshake process. So when an access token is expired, then the client can send a new request to get the new access token based on the refresh token, so that the access token usually have a lesser validity, like 5 minutes or 1 minute, something like that, whereas the refresh tokens usually have larger timelines, so time validity. So in that larger time validity, even if the access tokens are expired, the client can always use the refresh token and get the new access tokens generated and continue to access it. And at any point of time, the resource owner or the does not want to allow the client to access his resources anymore, he could actually revoke the access from that. Next is the OAuth 2.0 grant types. So it's actually various grant types are provided by OAuth 2.0, which talks about essentially the number of handshakes that happen in this process. If it is an authorization code grant, this is for the confidential clients, such as server-based clients, wherein the client needs to authenticate itself with a client secret. So every time a client hits a server, then it actually needs to associate the client secret as well with it. Whereas the public clients are kind of browser-based clients. They do not really need to send the client secret. They will not be authenticated by the server when they actually send the authorization code request. So the public clients, when you deal with the public clients, you use the implicit grant, and you have a resource owner credentials grant when the client demands the user ID and password from the resource owner. Then this is the grant that they use. So this will actually lessen the number of interactions to get the token. And similarly, the client credentials grant, which is actually a kind of place wherein the client will itself request for token for itself. It is not a delegated authentication in this particular grant. A reference token grant is something like when they see expired access tokens, using this grant they can get the new access tokens by passing the reference tokens. Moving on, so that was a brief idea or about the OAuth framework in simple words and the grant types associated with it. Now we are going to deal with what essentially is the difference between OAuth 1.0 versus OAuth 2.0. When we think of 2.0, it is kind of a bigger version, so we think that it has some additional features, additional benefits, etc., which may be true or may not be true for the reasons listed below here. So OAuth 1.0 is always highly secure than OAuth 2.0. I would say it is 1.0 is highly secure than 2.0. And the only drawback with OAuth 1.0 is that it is actually very complex, less flexible, and it would actually consume larger times for the implementation. Whereas the other one is easy to implement, and you could establish the security relatively bigger security than the other schemes that we discussed, but and very easy for the third-party developers to implement. But again, this is a bit less secure than 1.0. The other advantage or other difference is that OAuth 2.0 different considers the non-web clients as well, like the server-based clients. Whereas the other one, the bigger limitation with OAuth 1.0 is that it only implements the web browser-based clients. And as well, if we look at the trend, most of the larger big companies like Google and stuff like that, they are actually revoking the OAuth 1.0 security mechanism, and they are moving on to OAuth 2.0. And as well, the other differences are listed here, like it needs HTTPS communication for 2.0, and it needs the SSL certificates to be exchanged, and it needs to send the client secret in every request, whereas the other one relies on the true digital signatures and encryption mechanisms, which makes it more and more secure than the other one. So if we decide to, but like I said, most of the larger companies use the OAuth 2.0 framework because of its ability to work with non-browser based implementations, and as well as its ease of implementation, even though there are certain security limitations, especially when compared with 1.0. But yes, OAuth 2.0 is relatively very secure than the other mechanisms. So, and it is widely used by all companies, and it has distinguished roles defined. So if you want to isolate the request authorization process versus the resourcing request, you could actually decouple them. And talking about the disadvantages of it, it is actually bearer token centric. Like we said, bearer tokens are always prone to a security threat, wherein whoever possesses that bearer token can always depict themselves as the real client and then try to invoke the APIs. So, and it's not backward compatible OAuth 1.0. And moving on with the demo part, I see that it's already 11:30, but allow me to walk you through the demo just for a quick couple of minutes. We are going to take advantage of the software web methods integration server platform to implement this OAuth configuration and showcase you how we can have this OAuth security implemented in using the so browser, SOAP UI, and the integration server itself as a client. So OAuth has, OAuth support has been introduced from 9.x versions of Software AG, and these are the built-in services that I'm going to invoke in my demo going forward. So I'm switching on to the Software AG web methods designer screen, wherein it has the authorized get access token and refresh access token services, as well as I have one more request called execute request. So OAuth execute request is used when your integration server is a client for an API which uses the OAuth security. And the rest of the three services are useful when your integration server is acting as a authorization server. And let me tell you, the integration server, the web methods integration server, can perform actions as both as a resourcing server as well as the authorization server. So I'm right now in the integration server administration console in the security navigation panel, wherein you have the OAuth. So I'm just logging in as an administrator. So these are the OAuth global settings, wherein you can specify whether you require HTTPS communication or not. If you do not specify, it makes it less secure, so it's always recommended to use it. But for our demo purposes, we are going to use HTTP communication. And the authorization code expiry time is 600 seconds, and the access token expiry time is 3600 seconds. And if you see, the authorization server is local. That means my current integration server itself will be serving me as an authorization server as well. So whenever I want to expose an API from my integration server, I actually need to know who are my clients. So I'm going to register all my clients in my Software AG web methods integration server like this. So all I need to do is like click on register client and specify all these details. I'm going to go back and show you an existing client for that. When you create a client, the client will get a client ID created, the name, the version, and what type of client is it, like a public or confidential. We have just spoken about what is a public client versus the confidential client, and there is a redirect URI. So this redirect URI is going to be useful for actually sending the authorized code to get the access token. I'm going to show you what it is. So, and next one is the token expiration interval. So do you want to specifically or explicitly specify the expiration settings, or you want to use the global settings is what it asks. And next one is the refresh count. So if you say like a refresh count, your access token can be refreshed any number of times using the refresh token that the server sends you. Or if you want to limit that, you can say like limit only refresh my access token 3 times, something like that. So now that I have a client registered in my Software AG integration server, the next step I'm going to do is like, for this client, I'm requesting for authorization. So I want to use the browser to show you how it actually does it. So if you see the URL, I'm going to invoke the pub.oauth.authorize service with the client ID and the response type as code. So I'm expecting the response as the authorization code. Now the Software AG server has presented me with a HTML page wherein it is asking a resource access approval. The application test and test 1 is requesting access to the following scopes. If you trust this application, select the scopes to which you want to grant the access. So let me go back here. Once you register the client, it's also essential to define a scope for that. That's where we actually limit the access that a user can have or a client can have on the resource APIs. So you can go to the scope management, click on add scope, You just need to give the name and the folder and services listed. You can list them over here so that the client will be allowed to access only whatever you specify out there. So I'm just going to show you a test scope which was created before. So it has test scope name and it can access the resource server folder on my integration server. So now that you have created a client, you have registered a client and you have defined the scope, but it's the time to associate both of them. So you have to click on the test scope, the scope that you created, and associate your test your test client. So if it is here, then you just need to move it here so that it is associated with the scope, then save it. Now all you need is to just say, so it's actually whatever the scope you have defined, it is asking for approval of the same scope. Now you can say like approve. Once you approve the request, the server presented you with the code, that the one that we're talking about. This is the authorized code. So you're going to send this authorized code and with the grant type as authorized underscore code for getting the access tokens. And the redirect URI is right now it's a dummy redirect service. So it actually presented these 4 outputs in my browser window. But if I actually make it like, if I make my redirect service, if I update my redirect service to the actual service, what it does is like it gets that. Let me show you the client code for that. So this is a simple client. Even if you are not from web methods background, it is easy to understand. Just go with the text that you see out there. So I'm making a HTTP call from my server to get the access token. If you see the URL, I'm accessing pub OAuth get access token URL. So for that access token, I'm supposed to send the grant type, code, client ID, and redirect URI, which were actually the output that you are seeing here. So I'm going to route this output to this service so that it gets me the access token and the refresh token, and that refresh token I'm passing it to execute request because integration server is my client. So I'm passing that OAuth access token to my execute request. And if you see the resource URI here, I'm internally rerouting my access token request. Once the access token is created, I'm rerouting that to the actual resource URI. If you see the resource URI, so my resource URI is like this OAuth demo, and then a resource server, a resource. So this is where my server code is residing. And now I'm going to show you invoking this service now again with the proper redirection URI. So the moment I click on approve, I'm expecting the authorization to be passed, and I'm expecting the get method to be invoked in this one, and that get method should return me a result saying that the HTTP get method was successfully invoked. Let me see. I'm approving the request, and if you see that it has got an access token that was passed to the service, and this is the resource URI that it invoked. And if you see the output, it says that HTTP get method was successfully invoked. So this is a basic implementation using Software AG Web Methods platform. And with this, I'm going to wrap up my session. I hope you enjoyed it. If you actually, if any of any of your requirements, if you want to personally request for a demo, we would be more than happy to do it with more customized requirements of yours. All you need is to just reach out to our sales team with your feedback on this webinar. And now I'm going to leave the session for a bit question and answers. I know we crossed 11:30, but I will actually leave it for question and answers now.
Thanks, Siva. It was really helpful for us, and I hope, even for our customers as well who are on the call today. Well, I know we are running short of time. We have took more than what we were expected to, but we have a couple of questions coming in. If you can, probably answer those, that would be really helpful. And at the same time, guys, if you have any questions, you can just drop an email to us. We'll be happy to help you out, and either Siva or me will be getting back to you on, your questions. So Shiva, we have the first question here. Can web
Sure.
methods integration server with OAuth solution act as a third-party OAuth provider?
Can it act as a third-party OAuth provider?
Yes.
Yeah. So that question is a bit tricky. We can say we can make it work as a third-party OAuth provider, but this may not be the right implementation to do so, because web methods in turn, being the application server, need to invoke the original resource API URL as well. So in that case, it may make more sense to create a wrapper or invoke that the resource API from web methods, to create a wrapper on the web methods layer, and for that web methods layer you can establish security, OAuth security, and that's how it acts like a OAuth provider. But essentially what it does is like it is doing the middlewareing job of transferring your request after security is passed.
All right, makes sense. So we have one more question. How do we configure OAuth in multiple server infrastructure?
Okay, when we say multiple server infrastructure, I assume it's the place wherein the integration servers are in a cluster. So in that case, like if I go back to my previous slides or my browser window, so in OAuth, and then define the client registration. Sorry, OAuth global servers. If you see here, the authorization server in this case is local, but if you want to use a cluster of integration servers, then probably you need to define a remote integration server as an OAuth provider, and the same remote integration server can be the authorization server for all of the servers under the cluster. That way, you can still delegate the requests.
Okay.
So the simple answer for that question is to define a remote integration server in each of those cluster of integration servers, and then configure that remote server as the authorization server, so that the token that the client is issued will have the same presence, the same existence across the servers.
All right. So, I guess that's it for now. Let's see if we have any more questions for next couple of seconds.
Sure.
Else we can, end up the session for today.
Sure.
But however, we have the video recording of this session. Right after this, we'll be sending you the video link as well for your future reference. And also said, you can just drop us an email, and we'll be happy to, either give you a demo on this, or we'll probably look into the pain points what you have in.
Yep.
All right, I don't see any questions coming in, Siva. It was really, helpful for us with your session today, and I'm sure, as I said earlier, most of the attendees might have also, took some knowledge out of it. So thank you very much, audience. Thank you very much for having us today, and we look forward for the next coming up sessions from Kellton Tech.
Thanks, Vikas, and thanks the rest of the world for joining this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good day, guys.